Have you ever wanted to do something for the first time, but you've got so much enthusiasm and excitement and energy, you go about it and you tackle it in such a way that you end up overdoing it and you can't quite finish it, and you just feel like, oh, that was really immature. Like, for example, like, you want to do like a 5K race, right? As soon as the start goes, you start sprinting, right? But it's going to be pretty impossible to finish the race if you're sprinting, right? Well, that's what I want to share with you today. If you listen, I will share with you something I discovered pretty early on in my cycling journey, and something that is going to be pivotal for transforming your fitness, transforming your sense of just awe and amazement in cycling, and also in a way that will transition into other aspects of your life, a new way of thinking about things in terms of how you tackle tasks. Pretty exciting, right? And I'll also give some bonus tips, so stick around more towards the end and I'll explain it all, right? So I'm going to go through it. So here's the thing. So you're on your bike, right? You got the bike, you're at the mountain, you're ready to absolutely tackle it and demolish it. But here's the thing. You haven't been to the mountain before. You don't know how long it is. You don't know which route to take exactly. You don't know how steep it gets. You don't know when it gets flat, when it goes a bit downhill. You don't know exactly where the finish point is. Right? All these factors are pretty scary, right? More so, you just feel a sense of like a fear of the unknown almost, and it's almost so crippling that you almost don't want to tackle the mountain at all, and kind of don't want to go so slow that you feel like it's just, you don't want to do it. But that's kind of where I'm going to share with you today how to actually achieve this. The way I see a mountain climb, or climbing a mountain, or part of that, would be akin to how I would see a boss in a video game, like in a Japanese role-playing game. Let me explain. See, the thing is, I feel that the mountain represents the boss, right? But in the games that I would play, Final Fantasy, Persona 4, Persona 5, I found that you get to a certain point and you have to face off against the boss. If you do not beat that boss, you cannot go any further, you cannot level up, you cannot get any stronger. That's it, right? Mountains are an important component to getting fitter, to building strength on the bike, to building overall health, to lose weight, to obtain mental clarity, to have that sense of spiritual renewal. There's so many facets that this presents as an opportunity. But in the video game, I would find comfort when I was able to determine what the health of the boss was. And this wouldn't be in every single video game, but in particular in the Final Fantasy game somewhat, there was a spell that you could cast that would tell you how much health they had. So this is kind of great, because knowing the health or the length of the mountain, I'll be able to explain how you can figure out the length of the mountain shortly, allows you to know how long the fight will be and how to go about it a certain way. For example, if you're fighting a boss compared to a regular enemy, you're not just going to attack, because if you don't heal and let him attack you, you're eventually going to die and then you won't beat the boss, and you just keep getting stuck over and over again. It's like sprinting at the start of a 5K race. You're never going to finish it. Same too with the boss. But what if, so in these video games, right, you'd have a party of 3 or 4 players, and you know, you can work as a team to strategize how to beat the boss. And that's the beauty of knowing the health and of course your health. See, the thing is, when you're facing off, right, you'd want to do it in a certain way that you're attacking, you're healing, you're, you know, chipping away at the boss's health, and then understanding the nuances of how close you are to the finish, so you can kind of know when to time, you know, your special attacks, your limit breaks, which are kind of like an attack that you save up, you do heaps of damage, but in doing so means the boss gets his turn sooner. So for example, in the Final Fantasy X games, you know, every move you would take would tell you when the boss's move would come up. So it's kind of like a cause and effect, like chess strategy game almost in itself, which is really cool. So I guess by using those, you do more damage, but in doing so, the boss would probably attack you sooner. So you kind of have to be prepared for that attack, so to speak. And I guess like in the sense of what an attack represents, is what I'm trying to get at is like in the mountain, a boss's attack will be kind of like the steepness of a certain climb, which will try to wear you out, or you might want to attack it, so you use too much energy and you'll get tired. So that's kind of like the way I almost see it. But going back to the health and seeing the health, there's also other nuances, like you might get to 30% of the boss's health and it might change its form. I think the old, this isn't my final form joke, right? So it would change its form, meaning you have to be ready for that. So you want to kind of like, before that, you'll want to heal up your party, cast what's known as like, say, a protect spell, which is defensive magic to help against incoming attacks, to reduce the potency of their attacks on you. And kind of not just keep attacking for the sake of it and then kind of like end up dying. You want to beat the boss and you want to finish the mountain, right? So that's kind of like the way I see the health. And of course, you can time this by getting close to the end and, you know, saving up all your limit breaks, your big attacks, and, you know, kind of finishing them off and so on and so forth. And that's it. You've completed it. You get the level up and everything. Now, how to see the health of the mountain, I like the length. This is tricky. Now, you can of course research the climb itself before, but of course that means you have to know where you're going, you have to know what the climb is. Like for example, if you research and determine that the climb is 5 kilometers in length, right? That means that if you have your your phone and a bike computer, you will be able to hit the lap button at the start of that climb, and it will revert to a new screen and have a distance of 0 kilometers or miles or whatever measurement you would like to use. And you'll see that when you get to, say, the 1 kilometer mark, you realize, oh, I'm 25% done. I've chipped away at 25% of its health. I can kind of see where I am at in the battle. And of course, you can also put in other metrics such as the vertical elevation, which might be in the 5K climb, a total of, say, 400 meters of vertical elevation. So you could also have that metric and say, okay, I'm a K in and it's showing that I've done 50 meters of vertical elevation. So I'm X amount of the way there, right? Same thing. So that's pretty cool in the sense of you can see that. But that's just kind of only part of the story. Like, you're getting visibility over what they're made up of, and visually, and kind of in a sense when you'll finish it. But what about finishing it in the best way possible, and you know, finishing it so that you've got nothing left in the tank, so you're timing it perfectly, pacing, exactly what I'm getting at in this video, right? There is a tool that is extremely important, and I would say a necessity for achieving this. And the sooner you can invest in this, the better. I've included this in my ebook Life Cycles, and I explain the whole gambit about how it works. But what I am getting at is what's known as a power meter. A power meter is a tool, a gadget, if you will, technology on the bike that will tell you objectively what output in terms of wattage is measurement you are putting out. And this is important because the harder you push, the higher the watts will go, right? And through testing, like for example, you do a 5-minute test, you go all out, you'll be able to determine, it will say that your average watts is this, or your time for the 5 minutes is this, right? So that means that if you take that number, say you do 5 minutes time trial, you go all out as hard as you can, and you're able to determine that you can do about say 300 watts. Okay, so 300 watts. We take that number, right, and we multiply it by, of course, say I think it's 85%. And that will be able to tell us what's known as our functional threshold power, and an intensity that we should be able to hold for, I believe it's 20 to 40 minutes or 40 minutes to an hour. Let's just say it's 85% is about, say, probably between 20 minutes to an hour, or over 20 minutes to an hour. This is for simplicity's sake, right? So that tells you, the way I see it, where you're like almost your own health. And what I mean by that is, okay, so I've explained the boss, right? But what if you're riding, right, with some friends and you get to a mountain, but you've got, again, no idea about length, distance, whatever, right? You only know, well, through the power meter yourself, right? So how on earth are you going to figure this out? How fast do you go before you get to the mountain? How do you figure this out? And then what do you tackle the mountain at? What intensity? Like maybe your friend might be able to say, well, it's about a 30-minute climb, or it'll take 20 minutes, and that's going to be helpful, some type of measurement or gauge, right? Okay. Going back to kind of getting to the mountain, you can do what's called a zone 2 effort, which is between 55 or 56 to, I think, 80 or to 76% of your FTP. So you get that number. So say you do 300 multiplied by 85%. That gives us, I think, let me just check some numbers I've got here. So I've kind of done this calc. Gives us 255 watts for 85%, right? Okay, cool. But then for cases of being between 56 and 75%, 56% is about, I think, 160, what do we got here? 168 watts, right? So that's kind of like a pace that you can sustain for allegedly, so to speak, fitness and building it up 1 to 3 hours or 4 hours, right? It's kind of like your endurance pace. It's a pace that you can exercise at, but also talk at. It's not so hard that you're breathing and you can't talk, for example. That's kind of like how you measure what that represents. So you're taking that to understand how to get to the mountain. And then when you get to the mountain itself, okay, you've been told let's say it's a 40-minute climb. Okay, so you know that 85% of your FTP, functional threshold power, that you can hold for 5 minutes is 300. 85% represents 255 watts. So if you keep your watts in the range of, say, 250 to 255 or 245 to 255, you should be able to hold that for, say, 40 minutes, and you'll be able to conquer that climb, and boom, you should have just enough energy to finish it, right? That's kind of you mapping it out. And a similar effort, if it is, say, a sub 20-minute climb, you can probably go at 95% of your FTP. So kind of calculating that 300 by 95 equals 185, I believe it is. And that will effectively tell you kind of what you can ride that at, which is a little bit more intense. But I guess bringing this back to the analogy and what I'm trying to explain here is that the power meter effectively, and through the pacing and wattage, is like your attack. But here's the thing: every time you attack, it's a double-edged sword. Like in the sense that your attack will deplete your health a bit, right? So by depleting your health, you have to be careful that, if you do a really big attack, your health will get depleted more, versus if you do a smaller attack, your health will get depleted less. And through fueling on the bike with my secret formula, you will be able to replenish that health lost, so you can kind of keep yourself fueled up and kind of as strong as you can for the boss fight being the mountain, right? So there's that component. And there's also the idea of using the power meter to get to the next level. What do I mean? Okay, so by doing the test for 5 minutes, you're able to determine that you can ride at 300 watts. Through riding at 85% of your FTP or 95%, doing these weekly efforts of pushing yourself at this very intense level, you'll eventually build more efficiencies, and you'll eventually find that your 5 minute might go to 305, 310, 320, 330 watts, right? Meaning that all your other numbers relative will get adjusted, right? So you might find that the first time, for example, you do a FTP test for 5 minutes, you get 200 watts, and then after enough training, you get 250, and then maybe even get it to 300, right? So you'll kind of find that the bigger attacks that you would do become no longer bigger. They're relative. As you've leveled up with the power meter, we know that when we level up in a video game, we get more health and more attack power. So I guess by having more health, even if, for example, that we'd still get, say, more knockback from doing a bigger attack, because we've got more health at that point, it doesn't seem as taxing as it previously did. And that's the distinction that I'm trying to, I guess, get at and illustrate through this analogy. And it's a bit of a tricky one because there's a lot to it, in the sense. And I guess, through fueling, what I'm trying to say, that you recover, in the sense that if you go at a certain pace and you know the length of the climb, or you can kind of do it a certain way, you'll allow the fueling to be like a regenerative spell that kind of every couple of seconds gives you a couple of health points, so you eventually get your health back to where maximum level, so you're nice and strong, right? So you can find that through doing this training and using a power meter, you level up. Your bigger attacks mean that you can ride faster, ride longer, right? And then here comes the interesting point, the special attacks, the limit breaks. What do I mean by this? Okay, so you've followed what I've said. You know that for a, say, 40 minute or over 20 minute to 40 minute climb, or an hour climb, you can do 85% of your FTP. You're pretty much there. You've got 30 seconds to a minute to go. You can see the finish line, right? This is where you can use a special attack. Meaning, this is where you can do a sprint. A sprint that will require you to use, all that you have, but you can only maintain for 30 seconds to a minute. Through the power of pacing and being able to keep yourself at a certain level, you have enough energy to do this, and then effectively crush the last component of the boss battle. Like, for example, I guess in Final Fantasy X, to give us an analogy, if you beat the boss normally, you get certain experience and you get an item. Like you can overkill a boss where you do so much more damage at a certain point to finish him off. You've considered to have killed him, have absolutely obliterated him, right? You get more rewards. And that's kind of what this is. Using this limit break, timing it, because you can see the health of the boss for this point in time, will allow you to reap those benefits and rewards and more, level up of your fitness, right? And your weight loss, and getting to that next level quicker. That's kind of what I'm trying to explain with this. Okay, so that's great, Sal. You're saying that a bike computer, using your phone to set this up, you can see the health of the mountain, how long it is. If you can't, you know that if you sustain a certain effort of power that you can objectively see, certain levels, zone 2, you'll be able to sustain for a long time. So you have plenty of health by the time you get to the mountain. the mountain with your benefit of your friends or someone you're with, you'll be able to tackle at a certain pace, knowing that you'll have enough by the end, or to make it to the end. So again, you finish that 5K race like I started at the beginning, which is exactly what I'm trying to demonstrate to you. Now, bonus tip for staying this long, right? Power meters, I won't lie, are an expensive piece of bike equipment. It's probably the best investment you can make, but a lot of people will say it's too expensive or this and that. I get it. It can be somewhat expensive. It has gotten cheaper. What I will recommend that you do is with your bike, your left arm crank on the pedal. So not the pedal side that has the chain on it, but the other side. You can take that off and ship it in a box to, say, Stages, who make power meters. And what they can do is, if you obviously contact them, let them know what's going on, they can fit their power meter onto your left arm crank at a price that would be much cheaper than buying from them a crank arm with the power meter on it, right? Of course, the only detriment is that you have to wait a certain amount of time for this. However, this would save you more money than having to get a power meter brand new, or of course you could buy a power meter secondhand. As long as it's the right crank length, it should be fine, right? And of course, I go into more detail like how to set up the power meter and exactly how to do it on the bike computer and everything in my book Life Cycles. But I've given you tremendous value here in the sense of a discount that you can apply in order to get a power meter for a much fairer price, allowing you to conquer those mountains and conquer life and see where that boss is and what he's doing, right? That's the benefit of what I'm trying to explain here. But wait, it gets better. The benefit of what I'm trying to explain, the idea of pacing and going at a certain pace, not only translates to cycling, but also translates to running. See, the thing is, with running, a similar metric that you can use to determine objectively how you're going and what speed you're going at and how you can sustain it is what's known as pace per kilometer. Pace per kilometer tells you the speed at which you're going and then what time you'll get for running okay. For example, for me, if I run under 4 minutes a kilometer, that's considered, I guess for me, a race pace. A very, very quick pace that I can probably only sustain, to be honest, for 5Ks. That's it, if I'm properly trained and everything. Speeds that are more, say, 5 minutes 30, 6 minutes, are more akin to my zone 2, my endurance pace, something I could run if I tried for probably and conditioned myself for anywhere between 30 minutes to an hour, right? Then in between that, there's other paces and this and that. So pace per K is a similar metric that you can apply for running. So then you can finish the 5K, with everything that you've got in the tank, opposed to not being able to finish because you used all your energy too early, right? Your health is gone. You've taken too much damage. And a similar aspect of what I'm trying to share, you can take this to apply it to your life. For example, the idea of pacing that I'm showing can also translate to the idea of focus and doing what's known as deep work. You might find that when you're doing a task at work, to remain completely undistracted or to be in a state of flow, you can only maybe do so for 5 to 10 minutes at a time. Then you have to take a bit of a break and then come back and do it. But by doing so and continually doing trying to pick those hard tasks to do, you'll eventually find that it'll get easier to stay in that flow state longer and you'll eventually be able to spend more time in it. Whereas if you were to do a task that's a bit easier, you might be able to find that you can do those all day and they're not particularly taxing on the brain. Like you don't have to think as hard and they're kind of a bit easier to do. But those really hard ones that you have to focus and get in the zone, they're the ones that require the effort, right? That's going to help you level up, So that's pacing, right? Get a power meter, get a bike computer / use your phone and a quad lock combination. And then, put them together so that you can see how you're going and you can actually track your progress and test yourself and take it to another level through using a power meter, right? And pacing yourself correctly so you actually can finish what you're trying to achieve. So with that, you can conquer any mountain you see. You can conquer many mountains, right? In a safe way, in a sustainable way, and conquer so much more of life by just applying this one idea of pacing like that. This can translate over to, running, your work life, right? And the thing about this, by applying this pacing and being able to finish more mountains, right, by conquering more life, you level yourself up more, right? Your mental health, absolutely feels more amazing. Your spirituality and sense of accomplishment through the roof because you can finish all these climbs, right? Something you could thought never you could do. Your athleticism goes through the roof. Instead of focusing on weight loss, you're focusing on getting stronger and faster and fitter, right? So everything becomes fun and everything becomes a joy. Everything becomes like being a kid. Conquering mountains helps you conquer life. So, of course, if you'd like to learn more about this, please subscribe and I'll cover more stuff like this in terms of cycling, fitness, weight loss, mentality, lifestyle. If you'd like to skyrocket your results and have everything you need to effectively conquer mountain, conquer life, besides having the power meter and much, much more, life cycles would be the best way to achieve that. I consider it a cheap investment. It will save you time and money, give you everything you need to answer all the questions that you have to help you conquer mountains and conquer life. Right. And also, if you want a more one-on-one approach, there's a link below as well that will cover a 60-minute one-on-one consultation call, where if you send me some questions, I'll answer them ahead of time and we can have a really productive session where I help you set out, what the bosses are for you, how to see their health, how to pace yourself correctly, and how to set that all up to conquer those mountains and conquer life.